Luke Anderson is picking up where Queen's Park left off. He is the founder of StopGap, an organization that builds temporary ramps to make local businesses more accessible. And we welcome Luke Anderson to our studio right now. Great to meet you.
Steve, thanks for having me.
Not at all. Very happy to have you here. I want to ask you right off the top, you obviously had to come in here today in a wheelchair.
I did.
How accessible is this place to you?
The studio's, other than almost plowing over some cables, it's very accessible, and I don't live far from a subway station, so I was able to get here without a problem. I do need new tires, though. I'm riding on some racing slicks at the moment, but you know what? I did get stuck navigating an intersection because the snow plows pile up snow at intersections. So I gave it a little bit of gas, but I wasn't able to plow through. And thankfully, there were a few handy people around that were able to pull me through. But
very nice.
Other than that, smooth sailing today.
Luke, you know, I don't know if you like or don't like telling this story, but I think we probably got to start here anyway. You're in a wheelchair. You've been in a wheelchair for, I guess, some of the last decade plus of your life.
Yeah.
How come?
Yeah, quick one. And I make this mistake too. I often say in a wheelchair, but I use a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. My life changed very quickly, and I love telling the story. It's an important part of my life. And I was once a very active guy. I loved sports. Athletics were my passion, and mountain biking happened to be my favorite sport. And it was on a ride back in 2002 when I was living in the interior of British Columbia.
How old were you?
I was 24. So we're going back 12 and a half years ago when Johnny and I were riding a really difficult, very technical trail just outside of Nelson in the Kootenay mountain range. We'd heard other riders talking about this trail, and we were determined to find this trail, and in particular, this big gap jump that was towards the end of the trail, 25 feet wide by 25 feet deep. Johnny gave it a try, and he made it, and I was bound and determined to do it myself, but I came up short. And the way that I like to describe it is I left my life as I knew it that day. I suffered a spinal cord injury, and all of a sudden I was introduced to a world that's not well suited for someone that uses a wheelchair.
Did you plunge 25 feet?
Well, I came up short on the landing, so my front wheel hit the transition, and I flew head over heels and landed head first on the ground.
Did you instantly know you were in trouble?
I was conscious through the whole thing, and I knew that I was in rough shape. I knew that I was in a sticky situation, but we have this mechanism that kicks in, and it allows us to recognize that we're in a tight spot, and that human instinct kicked in, and I was able to calm Johnny down and tell him to call for help. So he took his cell phone down to the logging road and called for an ambulance. And if it wasn't for that human instinct kicking in, I don't know if I would have made it.
Okay, you told us that your life as you knew it changed, and so I think where we want to go now is to find out how.
Yeah.
A typical day for you now means what?
Yeah, well, all of a sudden I found myself in a need to rely on others for help. So I was proudly independent at one time, and after my injury, I found myself in need of asking others for help. So
I was going to say, you didn't tie that bow tie by yourself.
I didn't.
I didn't think so.
I didn't.
Looks very nice, mind you.
Yeah, YouTube helped as well, but I did. I had someone else's hands help me with that, and yeah. So you woke up this morning and you brushed your teeth without thinking about it. It's an automatic thing. You got out of bed, you got ready for your day, tied your tie, which looks great, by the way. And
not as nice as yours. You win the tie war today.
Thank you. My day involves those activities as well, but I have to use words to describe how much toothpaste, for example, I'd like on my toothbrush. And I have a team of helpers that help me with that.
Some of whom sort of work around the clock? Is that the way it works?
Well, they come and visit me throughout the day, and as I work full time, so I've got a great group of coworkers that help if I need my lunch heated up or help with my coat when I arrive to the office. They help me with that, but it's through words that convert action through the use of other people, and that was a huge lesson to learn, and it took a lot of time. It took a lot of time to figure out the right way to do that, and to be comfortable doing that, because sometimes it's with the help of complete strangers. Yeah.
Well, let me pick up on that, because most people in this province, of course, live in cities, and most people don't think twice, I suspect, if you're a so-called able-bodied person, when they get in the car or hop on the subway or grab a bus or taking a walk on a sidewalk. You see urban form, and what do you see?
Well, I see a lot of barriers, and I get frustrated with seeing a lot of those barriers. I feel every bump on the sidewalk. I don't know if you were ever a skateboarder, but you might be able to understand what it feels like to go over a bump on a skateboard. Well, that bump, multiply that by 4, and I can't get over it. So
do you literally feel pain when your chair goes over?
I don't feel pain, but I do register a barrier. It's not smooth, and in my opinion, other people might also agree with that. Yeah.
Well, one of your passions now is something called the StopGap project. Why don't you start by telling us what that is?
I'd love to share, and thanks for the opportunity. It's conversations like this that are very important in spreading the word and sharing how a barrier-free amenity can make life easier for everyone. So the StopGap ramp project originated back in 3 years ago now, when a good friend of mine and coworker, Michael Hopkins, got talking about how ridiculous it was with this 3-stepped storefront or 3-stepped office space. So Michael would typically meet me downstairs to get into my office and help me deploy this huge folding aluminum ramp. I'd have to call ahead to make sure that he or another coworker were downstairs to meet me at the front. And so this happened for 5 years, Steve, and it just reached a tipping point. And we thought, well, how do we bring attention to this huge issue? So I couldn't get into my office space, but I could also not access many of the bars and restaurants in the neighborhood that often Michael and I would want to access after work on, say, a Friday to celebrate the end of the week, and extrapolate that same encounter with barriers right across the city, right across every community in the province, across the country. The same problem exists. And
so how do you get these ramps into the hands of businesses? This is clearly, as the name suggests, a temporary solution, not a permanent solution.
It's not a perfect solution, but it gets people talking about the issue, which is the goal of the project. We want conversations to start happening. We want people to start recognizing that it is a huge issue that affects everyone.
Sheldon, can we bring up the first shot again? The colors are really quite striking.
Yeah.
How come? Good
question. So 4 years ago, when Rob Ford was beginning his mayoralship, he was hell-bent on eradicating graffiti, And there was a project that started up. 2 OCAD employees, Caroline and Vanessa, started the Good Bike project. And I don't know if you remember, but they locked up bikes around the city, really brightly colored bikes, to create conversation about community and the importance of cycling. And we thought, wow, it's so effective, because Rob Ford noticed them, and he brought attention to it because he considered it graffiti. Created a great media attention, and eventually he apologized for having them removed. I recognized that it was a good thing that was happening, but simple thing. Paint something really bright colors and watch people draw their attention to it. So we thought, why don't we figure out a way to give business owners a ramp and paint it bright colors so people see them, and it's been so effective. Good. It's working.
We've got, Luke, a couple of minutes left here, and I want to raise one more issue with you, and that is the Toronto's Disability Issues Committee looked at a request of the city to support StopGap, and the city issued a background report, and I want to read an excerpt from it.
Sure.
It said, the StopGap Ramp Initiative is an innovative project creating ramps which make approaching and entering a building or structure easier. However, use of the temporary ramp must also provide an equivalent level of safety for everyone. Unfortunately, there may be barriers to access internally which will limit the usefulness of a ramp. What do you take from that?
It's confusing. That's a confusing one. The way that we need to run the program is with the intention that the business owner uses the ramp whenever it's needed. So,
and take it away when it's not?
Yeah, and take it away when it's not, because it does encroach on city property. And for that ramp to stay out there all the time, they'd have to apply for a permit. And not every mom and pop cafe owner can afford to apply for the permit. So,
gotcha.
So here's a great way for them to invite anyone into their store, no matter what. Just all that needs to happen is that they bring it out.
And just finally, you know, this province is supposed to be barrier-free by the year 2025.
We've got a long way to go.
You hopeful we're going to make it or not?
I'm super hopeful that we're going to make it, but I'm convinced that we're not, because it's such a huge deal to become fully accessible, to change infrastructure and our buildings, our spaces, to allow everyone to access them. That's a lot. There's a lot of money that needs to be put down for that, and we haven't started the conversation yet. So that's what this project is doing. It's kicking off this conversation. It's getting people thinking about great solutions that could eradicate these big barriers that we're facing. And well, I have to thank you for inviting me today to allow me to share the project, because our goal is to bring it to every community across the country, and with hopes, with some funding, we can hit up communities across the country on a cross-country ramp initiative.
We wish you well with it, Luke. Thanks for visiting us at TVO today.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Luke Anderson, the StopGap Ramp Project.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.